So being visible on purpose for me means being a great role model and representing our community in the best light. And so as someone who holds the title that I hold, being the first Haitian American, first Black woman in that seat, I want to make sure that little Black and brown girls feel that they can aspire to be me one day. So
Hundreds of people got together tonight at Coral Springs City Hall to honor Vice Mayor Nancy Metayer Bowen. The 38-year-old was found dead in her home after police say her husband shot and killed her.
On the morning of April 1st, 2026, a city commission staffer in Coral Springs, Florida, received a text from the vice mayor's phone. The message was titled Discussion Items. It arrived at 8 a.m., right on schedule, exactly the kind of organized, professional communication people had come to expect from Nancy Metayer Bowen. She had 2 meetings that morning, one at 8:30, another at 9. She didn't show up to either. Staff began calling. No answer. They texted. Nothing. Then they did something that, in hindsight, tells you everything about how this story ends. They reached out to her husband, Stephen Bowen, and asked if he had heard from her. He texted back, "Hey Luam." Texted her. "She is not picking up." He asked where she was. Said her car wasn't at the house. He was worried. He was looking for her. He had no idea where she was. Except, according to investigators, he knew exactly where she was. He had been the one who put her there. This is the story of Nancy Metayer Bowen, a woman who had spent her entire adult life building something extraordinary. A woman who, in the days before she died, was hours away from the biggest announcement of her career. A woman whose murder was allegedly carried out by the one person in the world who was supposed to protect her. And this is also the story of something far more disturbing than a crime. It's the story of a reality that was carefully constructed on the outside, while something entirely different was collapsing behind closed doors. Because the question that haunts everyone who knew them, friends, colleagues, neighbors, isn't simply what happened inside that house. The question is, how did nobody see it? If that question unsettles you the way it unsettles me, you're exactly the kind of person who needs to stay with this story until the very end. Because the details that came out of that affidavit are not just shocking. They are the kind of details that make you look at the people around you differently.
I chose integrity, but when I think about integrity, it's rooted in truth, equity, and community, because if you do right by people, you'll be able to advocate for them.
Nancy Metayer Bowen was 38 years old. She was the first Black and Haitian American woman to hold a seat on the Coral Springs City Commission. A fact that, in a city that had never seen her reflected in its leadership before, carried real weight. But Nancy didn't stop there. She was a Florida A&M University graduate with a master's degree in environmental health sciences from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. She wasn't just a politician. She was a scientist, a policy architect, someone who understood systems and wanted to reshape them from the inside. She was first elected to the Coral Springs City Commission in 2020 and won re-election in 2024, unopposed. Her community didn't just support her. They ran no one against her. She was appointed to serve her second one-year term as vice mayor in November 2025. She served as vice chair of Haitian American voter engagement for the Florida Democratic Party and worked as the Florida Caribbean vote director for Kamala Harris's presidential campaign. Her political career had begun in 2011 when she interned at the White House. By 2026, she had done more at 38 than most people accomplish in a full political lifetime. And she wasn't stopping. According to Florida Representative Jared Moskowitz, she was preparing to formally announce her candidacy for Florida's 20th congressional district. The seat held by Representative Sheila Cherfulus McCormick, who had been indicted in November 2025 on federal charges of stealing $5 million in FEMA disaster relief funds and funneling the money into her own campaign. The seat was crumbling beneath its current occupant. Nancy was positioned to walk right into it. Her announcement was scheduled for Thursday, the day after she was found dead. And here is the detail that most coverage overlooked entirely. 3 weeks after Nancy was killed, on April 21, 2026, Cherfulus McCormick resigned from Congress to avoid an expulsion vote. The seat became fully open. The seat Nancy had spent the final weeks of her life preparing to run for, and never got to announce, was suddenly, finally available. Someone else will fill it, not her. That is the future that was taken. Moskowitz posted, "I'm in shock. I was just with her on Saturday. She just buried her brother. She was about to announce she was running for Congress. Nancy was one of the nicest people I worked with. That detail, she just buried her brother, is not a footnote. It is the context that makes this entire story almost impossible to process. In December 2025, Nancy's 26-year-old brother, Donovan Joshua Lee Metayer, died by suicide on December 15th, after a 7-year battle with schizophrenia. He was a senior at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland when the February 14, 2018 mass shooting occurred. He survived it. He developed schizophrenia in the years that followed, a direct consequence of that trauma, and he lost that battle 3 months before his sister was killed. Nancy wrote publicly after his death, "I see your messages, hear your voicemails, and am deeply grateful for every expression of remorse. As I continue to navigate my grief, I am not in a space to carry conversations at this time." She had called Donovan the sibling she felt she had to protect the most. She announced a mental health fund in his name. She showed up to her meetings. She planned her congressional run. She carried her grief and kept building. In September 2024, she had written about her life. "There's a special kind of joy that comes with living in my purpose, feeling anchored by the love of my incredible husband Stephen Bowen, the unwavering support of family, cherished friendships, and a community that continuously uplifts me." She named him specifically. She was grateful for him. And now here is the question that should already be forming in your mind, because it formed in the minds of everyone who knew this couple. If this is the life Nancy was living, publicly, visibly, gratefully, what was Stephen Bowen living? If you've ever known someone whose public life looked perfectly intact, right up until it catastrophically wasn't, drop in the comments what warning signs you think people tend to miss. This case raises that question in a way that doesn't have an easy answer. Stephen Bowen was 40 years old. He and Nancy had married on November 22, 2022, engaged in November 2021, married exactly a year later. Nancy posted on their 3rd anniversary. 3 years of building, dreaming, and loving each other through everything. He worked at Delray Medical Center as a certified radiologic technologist, a license he had held since 2014. He was also the chief operating officer of Men of St. Luke, a nonprofit describing itself as focused on creating a community for fellowship and discipleship among men who want to live life successfully in the eyes of God. The organization had originally registered under the name the Most Worshipful Union Grand Lodge of Florida, a statewide Masonic organization. His Instagram account featured 7 posts of him and Nancy, including 2 celebrating their anniversary. It also contained several posts showing him with firearms and videos of himself at tactical shooting ranges. One video depicted him on a wild boar hunt. In his profile caption he wrote, "God husband armed." 3 words. God, husband, armed. None of that makes someone a killer. But in the context of what the probable cause affidavit describes, how deliberately this was carried out, what was used, what followed, that bio takes on a weight that is hard to shake. Those who knew the couple told reporters there were no glaring red flags. His records showed no violent criminal history. Nancy posted photos describing their deep love and how they supported each other through hard times. But there is one detail buried in public records, rarely emphasized in the headlines, that changes the texture of everything. The 911 call that ultimately led officers to Nancy's body was the 6th call for service at that residence since the couple moved there in August 2023. Previous calls included a disturbance, a theft, animal bites, and another investigation. 6 calls in under 3 years. The Coral Springs Police Department was clear that some prior media reporting had incorrectly described those calls as domestic violence related. The only incident designated as domestic violence was the homicide investigation on April 1, 2026. We are not saying those prior calls indicated a pattern of abuse. The police are explicit on that point. But here is what police also confirmed. It remains unclear whether Nancy, who had been preparing to launch a congressional campaign, had confided in anyone about anything happening inside that marriage. What was happening in that house was not visible to anyone standing outside it. And on the night of March 31, 2026, whatever had been building behind those walls reached its end. Stephen Bowen told his mother he was having a panic attack at work and planned to talk to Nancy when he got home. That is the last documented moment before investigators say the marriage ended in the worst possible way. According to the probable cause affidavit, Stephen Bowen is accused of shooting Nancy inside their second-floor master bedroom that night. He allegedly shot her 3 times with a shotgun. And then, according to the affidavit, he fashioned a pillow as a makeshift silencer. Those are the exact words from the arrest document. A pillow was recovered on the bed with burn marks and string, as if it were fashioned as a makeshift silencer. Not a crime of sudden blind rage. Not a moment that spiraled out of control in seconds. The affidavit describes someone who thought about noise, who thought about what the neighbors might hear, who prepared for what came after. After the shooting, he went downstairs and slept. He slept downstairs. Nancy's body remained in the bed upstairs. And according to investigators before morning, he had wrapped her body in blankets and placed it inside black garbage bags. The next morning, April 1st, 2026, he was awake and responding to texts from Nancy's colleagues as though he was just as confused as they were. "Hey Loam," texted her. "She is not picking up." He asked where she was. Said her car wasn't at the home. He was performing the role of a worried husband. And at 8 a.m. that same morning, a city staffer had already received a message from Nancy's phone titled Discussion Items, connected to the meetings she was supposed to attend. A message from her phone. While, according to investigators, she was already dead upstairs. Investigators later charged Stephen Bowen with tampering with physical evidence. And that evidence specifically included a cell phone. I want you to drop an answer in the comments because this is the part that I think divides people most. Do you believe someone can fully conceal that level of internal collapse from a spouse, from family, from everyone, right up until it ends? Because every person who knew Stephen Bowen says they saw nothing. And yet the affidavit describes someone who planned, acted, concealed, and performed normalcy for hours afterward. Something had been building. For a long time. While Nancy's colleagues were growing more alarmed, calls unanswered, meetings missed, no explanation, officers arrived at the house that afternoon for an initial check. No cars in the driveway. No answer at the door. Nothing obviously wrong. But one detective looked up. On the exterior of the second floor, there was visible damage, crumbled stucco, exposed wiring, defects the affidavit described as appearing indicative of outward force, and consistent with damage caused by projectiles. The shotgun had been fired with enough force that its impact was visible from the outside of the house. Right there, in plain sight, and nobody, until that moment, had been looking up. That detail matters, because it means that for hours that morning, as staff texted and called and worried, as Stephen Bowen performed confusion over text, the evidence of what had happened was literally on the wall of the building. While detectives were piecing this together, they tracked Stephen Bowen's Ford F-150 using license plate reader data. At 1:39 p.m., surveillance located his vehicle in a parking lot at an apartment complex in Plantation, about 12 miles south of Coral Springs. They watched him make contact with another man and hand over a bag, one that appeared consistent, according to the affidavit, with a firearm-carrying case commonly used to transport rifles and shotguns. The man also loaded ammo boxes into his vehicle. The man later told police he and Bowen were both Masons. That Bowen had asked to meet, and he thought they were getting together to discuss an upcoming lodge meeting. He said he had no idea what Bowen had done. As officers moved in to detain them, Stephen Bowen looked up and said, "Oh shit, they're here for me." Not confusion. Not questions. Not protest. 5 words that told investigators everything they needed to know about what he already understood he had done.
Sky 10 high over a significant crime scene in Coral Springs, a home circled in police tape inside of a gated residential community. Here, officers found the body of Nancy Metayer Bowen, the vice mayor of the city, and they quickly determined her death a homicide.
This is being investigated as a domestic violence incident. Her husband, Stephen Bowen, is in our custody.
I don't know what's going on.
About a dozen miles away in Plantation, cell phone video shows law enforcement swarming an apartment complex, where sources tell Local 10 they caught up with the vice mayor's husband and took him into custody.
From Coral Springs to here, in this particular area, is insane.
Witnesses only learned about the circumstances in the moments after the police presence. The entire parking lot was blocked off for quite some time as detectives worked the area. Several vehicles were then towed away, potentially tied to the investigation.
We just heard a big bang. And I said, oh my God, is that gunshots? We looked out the window and SWAT cars, cop cars, everything just everywhere, guns drawn.
He was taken into custody at 2:35 p.m. Meanwhile, at 1:50 p.m., Coral Springs police had received a 911 call from Bowen's uncle. He told dispatchers his nephew had come to his house that morning and told him he had done something to his wife.
Okay, my nephew, her husband, came to my house this morning and told me that he did something to her.
Okay, her
I said,
husband?
Is he alive? He said no.
Her husband?
Yes.
The uncle asked dispatchers to force entry into the home, pleaded with them, tell them to break down the door by whatever means. A dispatcher responded they needed a reason. The uncle said, "I'm going to give you a reason." A SWAT team forced entry through a rear sliding glass door. In the second-floor master bedroom, they found Nancy Metayer Bowen's body in the bed, wrapped in blankets and black garbage bags. 3 spent shotgun shells were wrapped in the blankets with her. A preliminary examination revealed a gunshot wound to her left shoulder. She was declared deceased at 2:24 p.m., less than 10 minutes before her husband was taken into custody across town. When investigators asked Stephen Bowen why he did it, he said, "I couldn't take it anymore." 5 words. No context. No acknowledgement of who Nancy was, what she had built, or what she was hours away from announcing. Just, "I couldn't take it anymore." Think about those words against everything that preceded them. Nancy had just buried her brother. She was still grieving, still showing up, still building toward a congressional future. And whatever Stephen Bowen was privately carrying, whatever it meant, he kept it invisible to every person in his life until the night he acted on it. If this story is making you think about the people in your own life, the ones who look fine on the outside, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Not because it has easy answers, but because cases like Nancy's remind us what's at stake when pain goes unseen inside the places people are supposed to be safest. Stephen Bowen was charged with first-degree premeditated murder and tampering with physical evidence. Held without bond, indicted by a grand jury on April 22nd. He pleaded not guilty.
The husband of the vice mayor of Coral Springs now facing charges of premeditated murder. And that's not all.
Mr. Bowen, good morning, sir. You're charged with 1 count first-degree premeditated murder. You're also charged with 1 count tampering with or fabricating physical evidence.
55 seconds. That's how long the bond hearing lasted this morning for Stephen Bowen. Standing silent, his lawyer does the talking. Murder and messing with physical evidence are the charges.
There are no words that can truly capture the depth of this loss or the pain this organization and community are now dealing with.
Mr. Bowen, I am going to hold you without bond on count 1.
And so a husband stands in the center of it all. A life gone, a story that doesn't quite add up yet. Was it love turned deadly? For now, we just don't know.
A trial date has not yet been set, and this story now belongs to Nancy. Her family released a statement. Throughout her years in public office, she led with integrity, compassion, and an unwavering sense of purpose. She believed in bringing people together, listening to those she served, and working tirelessly to create positive change in her community. To us, she was a source of strength, wisdom, and love, someone who always put others before herself. Florida Democratic Party Chair Nikki Fried said she had held Nancy in a hug at the party's leadership summit just days before, never imagining it would be one of their last moments together. Nancy was my friend and a friend to everyone who has ever believed that democracy was worth fighting for. The world is less bright without her in it. Hundreds of mourners attended a candlelight vigil at Coral Springs City Hall. They brought white candles and wore orange and green. Coral Springs Mayor Scott Brooks said, "We're doing our best to honor this incredible woman, incredible leader, incredible human being." Colleagues described her simply as an angel.
Through grief and tears, friends of Nancy Metayer Bowen shined a light on her legacy. They say it's one of compassion, exemplified by the number of people who showed up tonight.
It means a lot. It means to show you who Nancy was to so many of us.
The Metayer family had a front row seat to the outpouring of love, which came with a flood of emotion.
Grieve how you gotta grieve.
Her family has been dealing with this pain for days.
She was an environmental scientist, a Johns Hopkins graduate, a White House intern turned commissioner turned vice mayor turned congressional candidate. The first Haitian American woman Coral Springs had ever elected. A daughter who buried her brother in December and kept moving. A woman who, on her 3rd anniversary, wrote about building and dreaming and loving each other through everything. She was 38 years old. And the congressional seat she spent her final weeks preparing to run for became fully vacant 3 weeks after her death. The announcement she never made. The speech she had likely already written. The supporters already organizing. All of it waiting for a Thursday morning that never came for her. State Representative Alexis Calatayud said in the aftermath, "What we see is that escalation happens between rounds of different incidents. The quicker we can get law enforcement to the scene to understand what the issue is, the more seriously we can deal with the perpetrator." South Florida lawmakers moved to pursue bipartisan domestic violence legislation directly in response to Nancy's case. Nancy spent her career turning grief into policy, turning absence into presence for people her community had overlooked. Even in death, even against her will, her story is reshaping legislation. That is the particular cruelty of it, and the only continuation of her work that remains available. Tell me in the comments, what part of this case changed the way you see things? Because I think the answer is different for everyone, and those answers matter. Subscribe so you don't miss the next case on this channel, because these are the stories that deserve to be told with the care they require. The city of Coral Springs will remember the speeches Nancy gave in those commission chambers, the environmental policies she fought for, the Haitian American girls who, for the first time, saw someone who looked like them leading the room, the congressional announcement that never came, the future she was building with everything she had, and the question her community, her colleagues, and her family are still living with every single day. What was happening behind those closed doors that no one could see?